back up here. Big thing that stuck out to us at the conference is that the purpose of a PLC is to improve teacher effectiveness in accomplishing Granger's mission. It's honestly, I have to tell you, it's always a hard pill for me to swallow when they say teacher effectiveness is a bigger deal than socioeconomic background. Teacher effectiveness is a bigger deal than, I'm like, but I can't be any more effective than I already am. I'm already doing my best, and now it's my fault that they're not. That's the way I always take that. After this conference, I took it a little bit differently. The teacher effectiveness, I can, if I have the tools, always improve. I can always improve if I have the opportunities to get better. It doesn't mean that where I'm at right now is bad. It means the same thing we always tell our students. Start where you are and always be willing to get better. And this is my 31st year of teaching. I still have a lot to learn. So one of the things that really stuck out to me is what happens, how does a PLC help teachers become more effective? Ironically, it's from shifting the focus from teaching to learning. A school that is that bottom line school shifts the focus from teaching, what am I going to teach, to what do my students need to learn. That what am I going to teach question comes up later, but it's not the most primary question. It's a slight paradigm shift, but it's really important. What do my students need to learn? How do I know if they learned it? And that's where we start creating our assessments. And in a meeting with, I don't know if Travis is going to probably want to say this later, but Travis was talking about how it dawned on him, okay, so I have my unit with a summative test, or a summative assessment, that's how I know if they learned it, but along the way I have formative assessments. And then, oh, it went a little bit more than okay. So along the way I have formative assessments, and then if I have the chance to collaborate with people and make common formative assessments and collect data from that and compare the data, I say, look guys, you guys up really good, aren't I? And collect the data, then that's the question where I ask myself, what do I want to teach? And I'm going to tell you, when I first started teaching, before many of you were born, I had teachers tell me that teaching is the best of both worlds. You get the security of a paycheck, a guaranteed paycheck, with the freedom of being self-employed, because after all, when I close my door, my classroom is mine. That's what we used to be told when I first started teaching. But this is a paradigm shift away from that, because the other change of focus that's really important is from teaching to learning, but it's also from isolation to collaboration, to being open to share our best ideas with each other, and being open to admit when we didn't have the best ideas. My ideas were not the best ones. Does somebody else have something else? Who can I draw from, pull from, in order to make me become an even more effective teacher? Those two shifts, paradigm shifts, can be really powerful in increasing teacher effectiveness. Our focus from learning to teaching, backwards from teaching, I like from, Willy Wonka, strike that, reverse it. Our focus from teaching to learning, and our focus from isolation, it's my classroom when I close the door, to collaboration, and then watch the incredible things that can happen in our school, and we're a pretty awesome place to start with, right?
Thank you. We appreciate all you guys have done for preparing for that. We will turn this time over now to our AVID group. Who's going to Schmelling? This data that they're collecting off these sheets will be information that we'll continue to build on in a further PD, so that we can really take a true look at where we feel we are and where we need to go.
All right, so as I stand up here, this is not my strength, speaking in front of others, and it just happens to go back about 2 weeks ago in the weight room, about 6:20-ish in the morning. There was a gentleman, he's got a little facial hair, tie, and dresses up. You know, he's got a water buffalo in his office. I'm in a Cape Buffalo. And I just happened to catch him. He's just staring in the mirror. He's flexing and everything else. So I'm thinking to myself, we need an intervention here because there wasn't enough weights on that bench bar. So I just happened to sneak over there, added a little bit extra weight to it, and here I am speaking today. So. All right. Avid. A lot of people, when they hear the word Avid, and they literally just shut down. They're like, whoa, so hesitant to it. Many of you aren't aware, you're already doing a lot of Avid strategies in your classroom. Avid is a program that's been around for 35 years. Basically, it helps close that achievement gap. It helps all students achieve being able to access more rigor and become college ready. So today, I'm up here to kind of talk to you guys a little bit about what I do in my class using these Avid strategies to help my students learn and help their growth and everything else. So most of us, we have our students take notes in our class. And after class, we kind of have them put away, and a couple weeks later, we give them a test, and then we don't see the results that we necessarily were hoping to see. So something I do in my freshman success class is I have my students, for the first 10 minutes, get out their notes, and they go over it, and I highlight it, and write study questions, and write a summarization. And it's been okay, but it hasn't been the results that I wanted to see. So this year, I started something new. So I have my kids get out their notes. And this is literally like a 5-minute thing at the beginning of class. It doesn't have to be a lot of time. But I have my students get out their notes. But I did something different this year. I'm like, we need to make this better, more effective. A lot of students, they don't know what to do. So I paired my students up with an elbow partner. I just kind of pointed around, did it really quick, said, hey, you're going to be sliding next to your partner. And for the next 5 minutes, you and your partner have a task. And I just laid it out right up front. If you fail, your partner fails. And if your partner fails, you fail. Puts a little bit of pressure on those freshmen that they just like, oh, we got to be really engaged. So with that being said, I give them a task. I need you and your partner to go back over your notes. I need you guys to talk, having that academic discussion. What's important and what's not. And I want you two to come up with what should be highlighted on your notes. And so then, again, I gave them a time frame. They went through that, and they went through and kind of identified what they needed to do. So sometimes on the same day, I'll have them do questions, or sometimes I'm like, okay, go ahead and put away your notes, and we'll see these tomorrow. Next time I have them, all right, you're back with your elbow partner. What I want you and your partner to do is I want you to come up with effective study questions or annotations that you can add to your notes. So again, back in the academic talk, they're going, and then they are generating those questions. And it's really powerful to listen to these kids actually discuss. Even some of your most crazy behavioral freshmen can actually do this. And you get goosebumps as you're watching this. Then I tell them, go ahead and tuck it away. The next day, we get it back out. I'm like, hey, all right, 5 minutes. I want you guys to go back over that essential question. What was the purpose of this notes? What were you supposed to be getting out of it? And I have my students actually go back through it, look over what they highlighted, look back over their study questions, and then I have my students actually discussing for that academic talk again, come up with a summary. And my students together come up with a 3 to 5 sentence summary. Go ahead and put away your notes. And then another day, we get them back out. All right, it's study time. Now it's time. Do you actually know it? So I have my students start quizzing each other. So again, instead of just saying, hey, take your notes, put them away, 2, 3, 4 weeks later, hoping that they do well on their assignments, hoping that they'd be like us and they'd actually be engaging with them at home, I've had it built into my class as an intervention time. Hey, I'm going to just take 5-10 minutes a day, and this is what I'm going to have my students do. It's been really powerful. The scores that my students were getting on their quizzes has gone up drastically. In fact, I've even reached out to some of my freshman academy teachers, the ones that I'm teamed with, finding out what they're doing in their classrooms. And I'll be bringing those strategies in my class and having those kids actually get it out and doing those things as well. So I encourage a lot of you that are having your students take notes, maybe just take 5 minutes a day, set that time aside, and have your students actually interact with the notes, and you'll start seeing a lot more growth in your students. All right, next up, we're going to have Mr. Keys talk, and we also have Mr. Weimer. Each summer, Avid is fortunate enough to take some teachers to a summer institute where they gain a lot of best teaching practices that they can bring back to their classrooms and just helps take their teaching to a new level.
All right, so mine's really kind of simple. For 3 years that I first started teaching, I tried to get discussions out of my kids, and I'm just absolutely horrible about getting discussions out of them. I can't get them engaged, I can't get them going. So last year, I actually stopped doing discussions completely, just because it was useless for me. It was 10 minutes of nastiness, I guess, you know? It was just not very fun. So this year, though, because I went to Avid, I decided, well, might as well try and try something new. So I actually took out one of these quick writes. You guys have all seen these before. And I just started having students answer questions on these. In part, just to get them more engaged. And what I ended up happening is I started having students say, can we stop writing on these and start having discussions about what we're doing? In particular, I was also talking about a subject that a lot of students were interested in. It was the role of women in ancient society. So it had a lot of good discussions. In fact, one whole class turned out to be just a discussion on that. Now, I kind of threw my lesson plan out for it, but it's on our standards. That's actually one of our standards, so it was kind of important to kind of talk about it. That's about all I have. I just tried something new, even though it hadn't worked for me for years. I just tried something a little bit new, and all of a sudden it works. And I've done it a couple more times, and it's still just been just as successful. So, that's it.
I've never held this study microphone before. In case you don't know this, I teach Socratic seminars sometimes. And to build off of what Kenny said, with Avid, it's not necessarily that they're giving you just entirely new, no one else does this kind of material or strategies. I, for example, did Socratic seminars before I ever went to Avid, but Avid gave me stuff to build off of it and improve my Socratic seminars. Not this last summer, but the summer before that, I went to a reading and annotation strand in Avid, and basically what I took from that was to have my students come to these Socratic seminars with annotations and specifically with tiered levels of questions. And where I went with that was, instead of me starting off the Socratic seminar and guiding it, I had entire rounds and even entire seminars where I did not ask a single thing. And it all came from their questions, from their notes. I also took and heavily adapted their philosophical chair, which I more or less just turned into a debate. But some really good speaking and listening strategies out there. And I know sometimes, like with Socratic seminar and philosophical chair, sometimes we're hesitant to try them because it can be difficult to hand that much power over to a class and step away that much. But I think sometimes you gotta trust them a little bit and they'll surprise you. And even if they don't and it is a disaster, you both learn from it. So, yeah.
Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay? Yeah? All right. If you can hear my voice, say hello. Hello. If you can hear my voice, can you say allo? Allo. If you hear my voice the third time, say hello, allo. Hello. Thank you very much. Now I feel welcome. All right. So my part is the last part for the day. When I am done, you're going to go home. All right. I want you to have something to look forward to. We've already had a really great opportunity to hear great reports from our PLC group as well as from our Avid group and of course administrative. But I do want you to take a look at this MTSS triangle. When I looked at this, I really thought of the importance of a balanced approach to proactive, positive school culture of academic learning. If you could look at this triangle in that regard, you're going to see that every side requires equal attention in order for us to be successful in achieving our ultimate goal, which is to improve student outcomes. as we move forward, I'm going to cover the section on behavior. So let's look at our language and our content and language objectives. I will read that, which is in black, and you will read that, which is in red. So teachers will
collaborate to identify effective classroom management strategies.
Teachers will
Evaluate
their
own classroom management strategies.
to embed in lesson plans. Oh, there I go. All right, so as we chat today, I want you to be paying attention to these objectives because that is going to be the goal today. In preparation for the collaboration component of what I want to talk about, I want to plant again in your mind the importance of the lesson design template. You can see that it's here. Many of you are very familiar with it. Many of you are aware that it addresses each of these questions on the lesson design template called guiding questions. Remember, our focus is really about us reaching out to every student to support them to achieve academic outcomes. And we do so by evaluating these questions. Are we achieving them? Now, in order for us to do that, in terms of instructional strategy, we must be paying attention to classroom management. The classroom management guiding questions allows you as a teacher to reflect within yourself, as well as with your PLCs, those who are closest to you, to identify what management practices you must embed in your lesson plans in order for you to help your students to know what they should know. And then I'm not going to go through all of this at this time, but it's important for you to take the time to read each and every one of these guiding questions and look at how you're going to embed the responses or your answers in order for you to properly achieve the goal of what these guiding questions are for the lesson design. Now, each of you actually have this in front of you. Okay, so just know that it's there. It's pretty small, but I think you can still read it as long as you have it. Yes, there you go. Okay, so the whole point here is this. It's in the goal. Plan and implement instructional practices and classroom management practices in tandem. They go together. Whatever you do with classroom management, you're going to be looking at the development of your lesson plans together to achieve the outcomes that you're looking for every single day. All right. So this video that I'm going to show you is really about how your classroom management begins to develop the learning culture that you so desire in your classroom. This is an English language teacher, secondary level, and she is going to spend some time actually teaching you what she does in her class by watching. But if you can, let's do this real quick. Yes, wait. Before you do that, I want you to think of two questions, all right? The first question is this.
Let's get to work.
Whoa. The first question is this. As you listen to this video, look for these answers. I want you to look for student and or teacher behaviors that stood out to you and why they stood out. And then I want you to look at the student behaviors you observed and the teacher practices, observe how they're linked together. Remember, we're looking at things in tandem. Now, after we're done with this video, it's very, very short. We're going to divide into groups of 4, and you will actually spend some time on the questions that you're going to design. Okay, go ahead.
The key is get them in quickly, and set the expectation before the first class ever starts. Welcome to the first day of Algebra 1.
If there is not a culture of learning where students feel energized and valued and worthwhile, the learning's not going to happen. It's just not going to matter. What does your prototype need? Does that make sense? I want to empower them to become autonomous thinkers.
Why do you think that they're starving?
I want them to be asking questions. I want them to not just be fulfilling a task, but having a very clear purpose to making sure that this experience and the culture can support it. Okay, your challenge for today is to be a reality TV show producer. One of the things that I've learned when I think about creating culture in the classroom in terms of designing lessons is giving students an experience to dive into. Google has hired you to help them figure out how to devise a prototype the more authentic that experience can be, I think the more rigorous it really is, the more purposeful it is. So there's an intersection for me between authenticity and purpose. In a lot of ways, the Hunger Games is trying to tell us a lot about ourselves without coming right out and saying it. I think having an authentic experience for them, or as authentic as possible, absolutely contributes to them being engaged. So when I would interview students about which experiences would teach you the most, I would continue to see over and over again that there were these moments when they dove into something, when I created something authentic for them. And on these cards are different scenarios. The more they told me that, the more I realized that had to shape what learning looked like, and the standards were going to have to fold into that.
She's not the only person starving. That's why do you think he burned the bread to get the food?
The bread is food.
It's food in general, it's in their own mind.
You have a good point though. The most important way that I am establishing expectations is by living them. That I am living the expectations. My brain cannot remember all of those standards when I'm teaching. So I boiled them down to these 6 categories. I am the geek in the front of the classroom, or the geek at the table with them, wherever I'm at, who is just as excited, well, who is frankly more excited than they are. Nice. Who is giving them high fives when they come up with a really insightful read or a great point. You have to get that in there somewhere. I have to teach them what it means like to be a member of this club. And I want them to know that in this club, your value comes from being authentic, joining in, taking intellectual risks, and the only way I can teach that is by living it. I had this plan, and then I realized my plan was not going to quite work, which sometimes happens with me. So we're going to do this a little bit differently. When you design a project where you get to be the coach, and you get to be the facilitator, and you get to learn right along with them, I dive in a different way. So is there any part of this prototype that's been connected to the crowd? It's very different than running a classroom or knowing the right answer.
All right, so this is what I want you to do. We're going to switch to questions. Okay, here are your questions for your foursome discussion. Okay, what did you see that were behaviors that stood out to you and why? And then how are these behaviors you observed and teacher practices you observed with each other? Please group in groups of 4 and talk for a few minutes, and then we'll bring you back together and we'll have a little discussion. Okay? Go ahead.
Let's